Hello and welcome to the Winners Line Show. I am your host, Trent. This is another fabulous episode. I am at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis with my good friend, Jon Peterson of Next Level Financial. Jon, how's everything going, buddy?
Good. Having a good morning this morning. All the coaches are coming and going. It's always fun.
And it's a busy time, man. There's a lot of business going on at the NFL Combine. Of course, a lot of people coming here going, oh, hey, we go watch the athletes, and that's exciting. But in reality, all the business behind this thing, there's a lot of activity that's going on from vendors to agencies to, man, think about products. It's a pretty dynamic commerce that's happening. Have you seen that?
Yeah, you do. You know, it's interesting because this is a gathering area. This is in the Senior Bowl. And you'll meet guys, see guys, find new guys. There's always new agents coming in. There's always agents changing firms, players changing firms, you know, and you're trying to deal with the coaches and find out who they're interested in and where your player may fit in their plans. So there's conversations all the time. And they can handle it 6 in the morning till 3 in the morning and in a hallway or sit down and dinner. All over the place.
Well, and I think that's a great example. I mean, like, so here at the Combine, like, business is happening 24/7. I mean, there are business deals being done at 1:30 in the morning, as early as, 5:30 in the morning. So it is constantly happening. Today, Jon and I are sitting at the Marriott here at the M Club here. Fortunately, a nice little host of Connor's Kitchen and Bar set us up today for a little meeting in the Marriott, which is awesome to be able to do our show. And for you that don't know, I am Trent Clark. I'm the CEO of Leadershipity. I'm an NIL education company. I am an international speaker and the author of Leading Winning Teams by Wiley Publishing. Super excited about being with you. Most people know me because I spent 13 years in professional baseball coaching in 3 World Series. So as we talk about win, find a way, I love the quote, Jon. Winners, when shown data that they are losing, find a way to win. And man, I surround myself with people that really get that are always pushing for that. You're a guy who's gone through some challenges, man. Like this wasn't like a road paved with gold for you to find all these NFL players and build this wealth management firm.
Yeah.
Tell me where you started, and when you were like the 15-year-old kid, is this where you saw the today Jon Peterson?
No, actually, I jokingly say sometimes I'm the Forrest Gump of this business because I have bumped in and run into people, guys you didn't know they'd become great, but they were really good guys. You're friendly to them. So in this business, you got to be friendly to everybody. Always extend an olive branch out first to try to help somebody make their business better, make themselves better. Give information to a player or a coach that might help them in a problem that they have. But yeah, I started out, I was a traditional stockbroker, and I had some friends that played in sports, and they started to become something, and they'd call me and ask me my opinion, but it wasn't my job. So I'd give them my opinion, I'd go back and do my job. And then slowly they became something and moved up into the ranks, and some of them are, Hall of Fame kind of guys now. So you just chip away. And so when I started to really focus on the athletes, I went back to my athletes and said, what was important to you coming out of school? And it wasn't picking stocks. It was finding an agent. It was taking care of my pregnant girlfriend. It was taking care of family members that were in trouble. And back when I started, guys were making about $195,000 a year. They're now making $800,000 a year as a rookie. So the money dynamics has changed dramatically. You're making twice what the President of the United States makes. If you don't have somebody in place to help you with taxes, budgeting, because a budget in Green Bay is much different than a budget in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And you don't want to go over a certain home purchase in Green Bay because you got to sell a home. Nobody's from Green Bay, right? They all go in and play and then leave. So you want to be able to be transitional and be liquid because your coaches can change, your injuries can occur. In the draft, all these guys think that they're on a team immediately when they're drafted and they're going to the Hall of Fame. No, you've been paid a fee to show up and interview for a job, and there's another guy with your job. And he's got a wife and kids and cars and everything else. So he's not just going to roll over and give it to you. So you need to make the team, you need to take a job, and then make a difference. And that's your 3-year assignment. And in the meantime, you've got to learn a new town, a new industry, which is now international. And you're going to have so many people coming at you. I mean, even here at the Combine, got to be 400 financial guys all trying to pitch the same 200 guys.
Yeah.
And it's really confusing for the players, and they don't know who does what. So now, if you want to get in with, say, a Tom Brady, you get in when he's young, and then you grow with him. Because today, if you try to take over Tom Brady, you got to undo 22 years of success, businesses, family members working for him, all the intricacies behind it. So you really want to get with these kids, build trust, and grow with them, and then you hope the career goes where you think it'll go.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we're interviewing scouts to find out, can these guys play and get into a second contract? Because the first contract will give you enough money to be comfortable. The second contract says you might not have to work again. Third contract almost guarantees you don't. But it also depends on what you do with the money, how many people come at you, how many cousins, relatives, strangers all try to pick you off along the way. And it can be really confusing for the kids who never had a dime in their lives. And all of a sudden they're rich.
Yeah.
Their contract says they're rich. We're trying to make them wealthy, right? Where money works for them.
So as a kid growing up, you start out, you're going to go into the financial area. You're a college football player, grew up in Hawaii and California. What most people don't know about you, John, is you're the son of a submarine commander. And I think that's pretty cool, right? You know, like, I mean, it sounds cool from the outside, like, oh, hey, what's your dad do? Oh, submarine commander. Like, that's pretty cool, man. And so I think that's always a fun thing to say. And, you know, but I also think there's challenges, right? Now you're growing up in the Navy, which means you're going to move around a lot. So you certainly can identify with the challenges that the coaches face and the players face, because we don't stay in a lot of places. I mean, I'm 13 years in. I had still 3 teams, and I think at one point there was a 3-year period where I moved, I think, 23 times in a 3. Yeah, I mean, like, it's that crazy when you're starting out. Like, you're just trying to make it, and it's just it's rough action, man. And you're asking, like, a significant other or a friend, and you know, your relationships to, hey, just come along, it's not going to be that bad. And like, hey, we should own stock in U-Haul, man. Like, this is crazy how much we're moving, right? And so there's these challenges along the way. You need trusted advisors as you go. So how does one, you know, when you talk about that, like, how does a player identify a trusted advisor in a situation where there's a lot of noise, if that's fair?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny because there isn't one particular question. You know, we developed a questionnaire that we give to the new players coming in, their families, so they will be able to interview people. Because an agent will never write a contract that says you're broke when it's over. Right? His job to write a contract that says how much you get paid if you play. The financial guys can bankrupt you. And it's funny because the sole focus is always on which agent to pick and not which financial guy to work with. Now, you know, my football is brown with 2 points and laces, just like everybody else's. So why are we successful for 35 years where, you know, why do the Patriots beat the Browns every year? Application of personnel and resources. Do they focus on this? Is this what they do on a regular basis? Do they know all the industry people behind the scenes? Do they know how to, you know, what teams are looking for? What do the Patriots look for? Well, you got a player who says, oh, I'm going to go in the first round. Like, no, you know, Pat Chung is one of our guys, and he was a top player. He was perfect for the Patriots, but the Patriots are notorious for rotating out of the first round. So they took him with the first or second pick in the second round, and it infuriated him because he wanted to be a first rounder. But as a general manager, your job is to pick the best players for the least amount, and if you can get a guy a few picks later, that's your job. And it frustrates players because unless you're number one, you all think that you got screwed over and didn't get what you wanted to do.
Yeah, and I think we're dealing with this even at this level where there is so much time spent and effort on getting the right players, man. And I mean, it is a challenging environment. There's so much strategically working behind in the background. And it's funny, you know, as you see it kind of in action here, it makes me laugh when all the fantasy leaguers of the world go, wow, what's this GM doing? He has no idea what's going on. He has so much idea of everything that's moving, and there's so many moving parts. You know, the athletes themselves probably know 10% of what's going on in the front office, and kind of vice versa. The front office is about 10% of what's going on in the clubhouse, right? There's a lot going on in the locker room, and there's a lot of dynamics and practice and strategy and how people are practicing. And so it's a challenging set that always butts up. And this is an industry agnostic, right? Because, you know, I had it in the shipping industry. My guys out on the vessel and my crews out there didn't know what was going on in the office. And the office didn't know what was going on in the vessels all the time. And you got all the communication strategies, but you've got to respect people for their roles and what they're trying to do. And it's not easy. And so I think one of the things I've been challenged by, and this is at the pro level, this is at the 10-year-old level, you know, the adults involved are delusional about what people are like. You know, hey, my kid is incredible. He's the best 10-year-old you've ever seen. There's no question he replaces Tom Brady in New England in 8 years. And you're like, hey man, I don't know what you're talking, but it's crazy talk. Like, understanding the levels that go into this, and we're just really not that educated on all it takes.
Well, we actually, and we had dinner the other night, and a guy named Matt was there, SI writer, and he basically said his contacts are saying the top 125 players are locks, great players. And after that, second, third round, fourth round, it drops off, and it becomes who fits a certain team, right? So you may see a player that was wonderful at a big college, let's say USC, he's a great lineman, but he's mature. And unless you hire him to come in right away and take a position, you're putting him on a roster for 3 years. Well, he's mature now. So 3 years from now, he's just older. So what you want is that project kid, the kid with not enough weight, or maybe a small school guy that you can coach up, that kind of thing. So you find this whole thing is also a personality contest, because if you get two players with the same talent and one presents problems for your coaching staff that you've got to monitor, you're not going to touch them.
Yep.
And so you need to actually interview the players too. And it's like, look, let's be honest about who you are, what's going on here. Now, if you're 6 feet, you're going to be 6 feet at the draft. But if you can't open up your hips, you can't pivot, you can't put your hands on people, you can't do the certain subtle things that make a difference to that position, they'll probably pass on you. So, there's certain things you can work on and go through. But you're right on the agents. So, they'll just tell a kid, oh, you're the greatest thing ever, and I'm your new best friend, and I'll take you to the promised land. And then reality kicks in. And this is where players fire agents right after the draft, because they were told to go in the second round, and they go in the fourth round, because they weren't being honest with them about their talent, and all of a sudden they're upset about it. So.
Yeah, and I think that makes perfect sense. And of course, parents, you're the agents when your kids are young, so stop being delusional about what your kid is, especially when you don't know the business. Right? Like, this is a business. And I think it's so powerful. When my kids were coming out, there's a couple of things that reminded me of this, is that once you get past the top 125 players, like, the physical differences are so fractional. It's now down to the intangibles. And you got to give, I always tell people, don't give people reasons to eliminate you from an option. Bad attitude, bad interviews, selfish play, no work ethic, little things that show up. And we were judging, coachability, time management, competitiveness. We were measuring all that, and we had like this matrix of like 8 or 10 things, which had nothing to do with running, catching, throwing. Like, listen, every player at that top level can do that, each and every one. So we're not so concerned about that today with how those levels work. So as we look into this, talk to me a little bit about your journey. Like, where did you run into the biggest challenge in your career that you had to overcome, and how did you do? Where did you see something like the biggest change?
Well, the hard thing about being in the brokerage business is it's just nasty and ugly sometimes. You never have a finishing point. If you're building a home, when you're done building a home, you have a product to look at and you're happy. When I'm trying to put a kid through college and it's taking 18 years to slowly grind and put money aside, you don't know if they're going to go to college. You don't know what's going to happen. So there's never an ending point for me, which I find that I'm a guy that likes to do a project, find something that's done, and then move on. But really, when I got into this side of the business, it was, I had an agent one time say to me, he said, you are an island in a sea of confusion, but they just can't see because the waves are too high. Getting through the nonsense and getting these guys to understand that this business is, it's just something that you need to work through. It's getting around the agents and getting around the guys and there's bad mouth, and getting around the guys that are always trying to tell the kid one story when it's really not true. Those things you have to get through. And you're trying to tell a kid a conservative way of saving your money, budgeting, and moving ahead. And they're thinking, I want to be P. Diddy and own bars and restaurants in the first week of practice. There's a mentality that you've got to weed through. And a lot of times I'll interview 200 kids and I'll get 30 or 40 that I think understand what this is about to happen to them. And then from there, you'll get, my 3 or 4 guys will go with me. I'll get 3 or 4 from agents and, 3 or 4 from referrals from other clients. So it takes on a different thing. You just have to be patient with it. It's not a straight path. And your player's career will not be a straight path. Even Peyton Manning didn't have a straight path, right? You had bumps, bruises, injuries. You got traded and went different places. But it's a results-oriented business, and they want to see results.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's something I had a very interesting conversation with the kids at Butler University the other day. Is like, and I use these terms of like the pro contract kind of thing, right? Which is most kids don't understand. Like, as you come out of this thing, you are their first round draft choice. When you come leave business school and they just interviewed, they got 100 resumes for that job, and they interviewed 10 people on the phone, and then they narrowed that down to 4 people they brought in, and then they chose you. And you're like, oh, hey, great, I'm still a barista at Starbucks. That's how I'm going to build my mindset into my new career with, like, for you, like a Lehman Brothers or a big house of business. And it's like, hey, man, you're their first round draft choice. Productivity and impact is going to be one of felt immediately. Like, how quickly can we make that feeling of impact is going to be so important. And man, I've seen just kids get challenged with that to understand that.
Sure. Well, and that's the thing. First and second rounders come in to fill a hole and produce right away. Third round and down can be project guys. Now, if you're Kansas City and you just won the Super Bowl, you probably don't need all your draft picks. So you can trade them away, line up something for next year. But you see these guys that are, we've had a player we interviewed one time, and the dad swore his kid was a first round pick, but the kid had broken his leg and his junior year, and his senior year the coaching staff changed, so he decided to go pro. He was a very well known guy, very good running back his junior year, but he got hurt, and so the pros want to see how you respond from the injury. Dad said he's a first rounder. We kept telling him he won't go above the third round because he's a project guy now, and he didn't hire us because he didn't like what we said. Well, the kid went first pick in the fourth round. And he played a few years, and he was out of the league. And so, it's a good player, good family, nice people, but the parents were delusional. And, they had ideas for his first round money that they were going to start businesses and do all kinds of stuff, but they really weren't qualified or had a background in doing. So you just see some of this stuff you have to weed through. And at some point, you realize you're not going to get through to these guys. You're not going to get through to Jamarcus Russell. He is what he is, right? But you get an Andrew Whitworth or Kyle Williams off the LSU team that play 10 or 15 years, drive a truck, marry their sweetheart, and they don't start fights. Those are guys you can help create a great life for them 20, 30 years from now.
Yeah, it's incredible, man. I mean, I think this is probably one of the biggest services that I think so many kids have missed, right? Is learning at even a young age how the money works, how financially you can do things. It was probably one of my biggest stressors as a coach in professional sports. Athletes would come to me and they would literally just not know very much about how this is going to work. And so the idea that they would retain the wealth they were generating in this, and it could be very short. Obviously, as you know, Jon, professional baseball is a little bit better on guaranteed money, right? So those contracts turn into a little bit better, but if you don't manage the money, it's just more spent, right? It's just more down the drain than you ever thought people could do and imagine in a short time, because they just don't seem to understand how the taxes, how the agency works, how to pay my team that works for me, and manage that spending plan of what I have available to me, and and probably more importantly, what I don't have available to me. And I think that's a challenge for a lot of kids. Have you seen that?
Yeah, and I'll give you a prime example, right? As you're playing, you're about to go to the draft. It's like winning the lottery, right? You're going to get a paycheck of some sort. You don't know how big, so $800,000, $2 million, you don't know. But your mind is, if we all went out and got a lottery ticket thinking we'd win tomorrow, your mind is working on how I'm going to spend it, who I'm going to take care of, what I'm going to do with it. So these guys think, I'll buy mom $1 million home, and mom will never have to worry about a home again. Problem is, you have power, heat, light, maintenance, furniture, taxes, and the taxes on $1 million home in California could be $20,000.
Yeah.
That might be more than mom ever made in her last year or two working. So you've got to make sure that you're looking at gifting and those things in a proper manner, right? Because you give mom a new Mercedes. Well, okay, when you're done playing, and mom needs a new car because the car will disappear. Is mom going to go back to a Toyota, or is she going to want another Mercedes?
Yeah.
Right. So gifting is a really interesting thing with guys and really thinking it through. And usually we try to do all these things in the second contract, because then you have at least some room. We treat our guys like they're 62 and they're 3 years from retiring.
Yep.
How would a 62-year-old run his money? He'd pay off his house, he'd pay down his debt, and he'd have his money earning him an income as tax-free as possible in this situation. Well, okay, when you go to a second contract 3 years from now, then we'll treat you like you're 40, and now we'll entertain businesses, Jamba Juices, all the things guys come across. But you really need to learn this business, because now it is international, and you should always do one thing per year. Get married, change jobs, whatever. Well, you're changing jobs, changing cities, taking on a new income. don't get married, don't buy a house, don't do those things. So pulling the reins in the first year is the most difficult thing. After that, they get the feel for the game and they get money and everything else, and starts to work itself out. Okay.
You know, one of the biggest challenges I saw, John, was you know, me being a rookie and you being a veteran on the team, and I want to spend money like the veterans spend money, right? Like, and it's like, hey, these guys are getting, you know, they just bought the $300,000 car. That's awesome. And like, hey, he's got 10 years in the league. Like this is a lot of savings. Like, he has no more debt. Like, everything's paid off. You know, he's got millions of dollars in the bank. $1 million invested, you know, tons. And you're like going, hey, $800,000 sounds like a ton of money on league minimum. But, you know, we know on a spending plan on $800,000, it's about $475, right? Like, this is a spending plan because that's all you have to spend. And it's like, oh, well, I want to buy this $700,000 house and live close to the veteran. You can't afford it yet. Like, this isn't where you need to be to start establishing yourself's a big deal. And of course, and I think the other thing I see is the gross spending of, hey, I see that John has the money to bring 4 of his friends, get a penthouse suite when we're in when we're in town, and he spends $25,000-$35,000 every day we're on the road, really treating his buddies and his friends. And I want to do that too with my friends. And like, oh man, you don't make that money to do that yet, and maybe you will. And I don't know if you'll ever. I never wanted to spend it. I never made that money. But like, I never wanted to spend that money like that way and go, well, that was active a weekend, $35,000 later. Like, what's happened?
And you're hitting on the head. One of the things you get is the guys go out for drinks with the guys, right? And they go to bottle service. Well, bottle service maybe $2,000. You get 3 bottles, whatever. These kids always call me up and say, I need you to go call this bar owner. I got a tab for $15,000. Like, I know, because everybody in the bar showed up, drank your alcohol, and the bar girls will keep bringing more bottles at $300 a bottle, and your tab gets out of hand fast. And so, you know, you need to understand that going in. You guys like us that have seen it before, because the senior guys, they're okay. They made $75,000 this week playing football. They blow $5,000, no big deal.
Yeah.
You made $15,000. You blow $5,000. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And it takes away from getting you set up and where you want to go. And I have been asked so many times this week, what would you study to get into your business? I said psychology, because money is useless. It's what you turn it into that makes it valuable. So dig deep and find out what's valuable. You're taking care of family, security, growth, setting yourself up for the future, or is it the red rope treatment where you have a Ferrari and everybody jumps up when you show up in your fancy clothes and everything else? There are guys who want to do that. That's fine. They're not for us, but you know, so we have to psychologically get behind the scenes and find out what's important to the kids, and then focus on what's important to them. And I had a player one time, and we were talking about what's important. He wants generational wealth for his daughter. And we said, look, you have enough money to buy a plane, buy a car, buy a boat. But if you're not a car, plane, boat, motorcycle guy, all you're doing is showing your kids how to waste money. It's not passion. You're just showing that you have enough money to buy stuff. And I think poor people buy stuff. Wealthy people invest their money and make it work for them. And whether it's a business, whether it's real estate, stocks, bonds, those sorts of things. And that's a personality thing. I've had some players start real estate businesses, and they love it, and they're great at it. And I can never say no to them because they know what they're doing and they do their research. I've had other guys open up, you know, frozen yogurt shops in Wisconsin, and you know, they were out of business in 3 months. And it was pretty evident why. But you know,
yeah, November's a bad time to launch frozen yogurt in Green Bay, so we all know that. So here's the other thing: is that I love the idea of the psychology. I tell a lot of people, like, man, I have the exercise science, I have all this background in physiology, and as a strength coach, I really need a psychology degree. Because this was the haven. This is where everybody comes in and goes, man, I just want to like decompress. I want to work out and be with my frustrations of the day. Or sometimes it's my joy of the day. Like, oh my gosh, I feel so good about myself. I went 3 for 4 and I'm getting my workout in. But there's a lot of psychologically things that are happening in the weight room. And it's the time I really get one-on-one with players, and they seem to open up in an environment like that. And then, man, I felt like that, John. I felt like, man, I should have studied psychology because I want to help these guys. And man, these are challenging issues. You know, you're dealing with self-doubt. You're dealing with, you know, the stresses off the field. You're dealing with, hey, I'd like to stay focused, but I'm really worried about my sick kid. And I'm doing all these things that are going on all the time. And like you see in your business, hey, I'm just trying to get ready for the big playoff game. And I've got 37 messages for tickets. And it's like, holy crap, man. Let me set up a page and someone can just go to a page and buy tickets or something, because it gets bonkers. So that there's so much to pull people away. But what I'd love to hear, Jon, to finish up here, is I'd love to hear, you don't have to say a name, but I'd love to hear of a player, I think a good example of a person who wasn't a superstar, who did, quote unquote, the financial fundamentals and stayed in the game long enough to reap that. And talk a little bit about their position, because they're not often the best receiver, and they're not often, they could even be a number 2 on the line, a big special teams person who gets, hey, these long snappers are playing 13, 14 years because they're specialty people, and it's not massive. But he did say the league minimum is $800,000. So if you get 10 years in, you have made $8 million, right? I mean, there's a digit here that gets a little crazy, right? And so, just factoring that in is real, right? So we got to figure that in. I did my math wrong, 6.4 million or whatever. Like it's real money. Sure. And so, talk about a little bit about that.
Well, and this sort of goes back to the whole interview that we've been having so far. We had a player whose agent was really smart and said, look, all the coaches you worked out for, write them a thank you note, right? Do something different that stands out. So when they got in the meeting room and they were talking about picking players, and every line coach, position coach, running back coach said, oh, I like this kid. And he goes, yeah, I got a thank you letter from him. And 9 guys in the room all chimed up and said, I got one too. That set a difference in their mindset of what kind of guy they're bringing into their community. And he turned out to be a wonderful community guy. I would love to drop his name. Everybody would know him because he did some good stuff on TV.
But if you're comfortable with that, you can do that. But like, I don't want to throw anybody in.
Just, I always keep it quiet. Our business is a private business. Yep. But so let's say that in his career, he made $10 million. He went through 2 contracts, 3 contracts, made $10 million. Right, you're going to lose $4 million of that to taxes and expenses.
Yep.
Well, he went in and invested the money, and then worked with us, and then started working on real estate. And he's got $20 million worth of stuff now, half with us, half in real estate. And so you get there's more good stories about players out there. You hear the bad ones. You hear the Pac-Man Jones stories, and you don't hear about the guys that are giving money to charities and doing the things the right way. But you have the opportunity to set yourself up for life if you just don't blow your cash and do stupid stuff. So. That's really the prime of it. So I've had some guys, and they step out and they buy a little real estate, because I tell guys, stocks, bonds, real estate, business ownership, that's how you make money in the world. So I'm not saying any one of them is more important than the other. Obviously, I'm a stock and bond guy, but I also understand you should own a home, you should pay it off. That way it's not an expense to you except for power, heat, light, taxes. Those are simple things you can budget into. But it's really getting guys to understand budgeting, making sure they're spending less than they make and that they can extend it over a long period of time. So we use sustainability is really the word we use. Is it sustainable? Can you buy a Ferrari today? Sure. Your contract says you can. Should you? And are you going to keep it when you have a wife and kids and you're putting bikes on the back of the Ferrari? Probably not. So, think through the things that you're going to do and what's important to you. If it's starting a family and having kids, don't blow money on a Ferrari. You lose 20% right after you sign the check. It's waste of time.
Well, it's a real fact that it's challenging. I mean, I think someone who gets removed, the spigot on income turns off very quickly, right?
Sure.
And you're like, man, I have a $60,000 a month spending plan, and all of a sudden you're like going, hey man, that's going to be $720,000, and you no longer have income. I mean, you can take a $60,000 spending plan down to 12 in a month. That is not an easy, doable thing, and it's not reality. So, man, you can really see how someone can bleed their wealth by going, hey, when I have the contract, the overhead's no problem.
Sure.
But man, in a very short time, it gets dark.
Well, and here's the thing about football. You lose your job, you lose your friendships in the locker room, and your identity all in one afternoon. And so you need to prepare yourself. And it's funny because we're talking to guys who are just getting in the league, and we're talking about what do you want to do when your career's over. And they're looking at us like, we don't even have a career yet. It's like, yeah, but you're going to meet people. You're going to shake hands. You're going to go places. You're going to see things you've never been exposed to. I mean, I don't think Tom Brady thought he'd be married to a supermodel. I don't think Kelsey thought in Cincinnati he'd be dating the most popular pop star. So these things occur along the path, and you have to be ready for them. But at the base, if you don't have a good family and a good core moral and ethic compass, you're going to have some trouble out there. There's just a lot of waves coming at you, and it's hard to find the island once you're swimming in the ocean out there, and you don't have somebody to help guide you. So we give information to guys to help them find somebody who can guide them, because there's 1,800 guys in the league. We can manage 200. But if 5 of your guys are a Tom Brady type player, you can only handle 10 of those guys. They're just too big, right? So, you just have to kind of be honest with who you are and what you want to do with yourself. And those things are easy. Those are good conversations. So we can help you find those. Whether it's with us or somebody else, we'll certainly help you out and get you information.
Love that, Jon Peterson. And, I think he's talking about something we talk about all the time, right? Physical conditioning, mental conditioning, emotional conditioning, moral conditioning. Like, all of them are critical to success. He just talked about how, man, you lose that moral compass, like, there's going to be challenges. And these are foundational things. And again, we talked about eliminating yourself. If one of those is a major gap for you, your foundation's got a crack in it. How big can you build on this thing? Yeah. He's building up wealth of millions of dollars for athletes. But all of a sudden, you find out a crack in that foundation. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, Jon, I got an issue. It's going to cost a $3 million problem I have. And you're like, whoa, hey, man, that's about a third of your wealth right now. And, like, that's a serious foundational issue. So he's talking about shoring those layers up, because that's something you're going to learn. And it's going to keep you from eliminating yourself from opportunity in the future. And these kids right now, they're learning that. They're learning, like, how they're going to go about themselves. And fortunately, they're going to have guys like us to come alongside, guide them through this rocky terrain. And we're GPS, right? Most people know where they want to go. They don't know how to get there. They flip the thing on, and Jon says, hey, you're going to want to come up here and take a left at this next light. He goes, oh, well, I don't think that's what I want to do. Like, no. Like, listen to the GPS. You don't know where you're at right now. And when I'm in these new towns, I don't know Indianapolis very well. And we go out to dinner last night to a nice steak, and I'm like, I don't know. And my GPS says, hey, turn right, turn left, go straight, do a U-turn and park. And I'm like, hey, look at that. Funny, I just arrived right in front of the restaurant. Had no idea where it was 10 minutes before that. But we follow directions, and we take directions from people that know. And if you're out there today and you're struggling, listen, surround yourself with the people that know. Surround yourself with a guide that shares your values, and that you will upskill you to the next level, like a Jon Peterson. Jon, any final words for our crowd today?
No, I appreciate it. You've been really kind to us. Appreciate being on the show today, and hopefully gave you some information to help you out, kind of know our business a little bit.
Perfect. Jon Peterson from Next Level Financial, super wealth manager of the NFL and a number of pro athletes. I didn't get into Serra High School. He's a graduate with Brady and Lynn Swann,
Barry Bonds,
John Robinson. Like, it's a super high school, man. So just a very prestigious school out in the Bay Area in San Mateo. And it's amazing when you see folks that you knew at 17 years old and where they were focused and how they found their way in their life, and they've modeled that. And they modeled that because there was a bunch of advisors around them to help them guide and be a GPS for them. So if you're out there looking for a GPS on your wealth management, looking into the pro sports, looking to be a lead, Jon Peterson's a good person to call. Find a person you can trust and do that. For everybody, thank you for joining us on the Winners Find a Way show every Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern, 9:30 a.m. Pacific. And we'll see you next time. Winners Find a Way.